Hey there. So today we want to share with you the four biggest things we see people missing when it comes to successful networking. These are four tips that we want to share that can actually make a really big difference in getting that next job or creating your next opportunity. Welcome. This is Shannon.
And Micah.
And we are the coaches of Shine Bright Coaching. And for the past 10 years, we've been coaching our clients to make successful career transitions, to up-level in their career, and just find more career fulfillment. So thanks for being here.
We're excited to share these tips with you because we want to help you feel less stressed about networking. It's something that everybody dreads, and it doesn't have to be that difficult, right, Shannon?
Absolutely. Yeah. So how do you define networking, Micah?
Well, I always like to take the networking title off of it and think about building a professional community. So as you're going through your professional life, you're meeting people, you're getting to know bosses, colleagues, people in your everyday life, and forming relationships with people who are like-minded and that you want to keep in your network. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and for me as an introvert, I know there's lots of introverts out there. The biggest shift was what you said, that shift from calling it networking, which all of us have this squeamish attachment to that word, like, oh, I'm gonna have to stand in a room with strangers and make small talk, and that's like the worst nightmare for an introvert. But the shift to looking at it as relationship building and really trying to connect and build relationships with people over a longer period of time made all the difference in terms of how I thought about networking, but also how I approached how I did it.
Exactly, and that's going to be what we talk about today in terms of our tips, what we see people missing and why they get stressed about it, because they're not really looking at it intentionally.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into it. The first thing that, I want to share that I think is a missed opportunity is really spending the time prior to starting your networking to really define your brand, which is really, translated to what do you bring to the table? What is the value that you have to contribute? And having a very solid elevator pitch that you have in your back pocket so that when you are starting your networking and even if you're just reaching out to your friends or old colleagues, and these are people that you already have relationships with, you want to come to these conversations with a clear and concise overview of, who am I? What do I have to offer? What is the value that I see myself wanting to contribute? And what am I looking for in my next opportunity?
Yeah, that's so important because in practicing it, in taking the time to think about it and crafting that personal branding, you're actually building new ways to talk about yourself. You're building confidence in your ability to articulate who you are. And that comes through when you're having conversation with anyone. But really in networking, people want clarity. They want to understand where you're coming from. And again, what you said at the very end, what you're looking for in your next opportunity.
Yeah. And I think, often if we come to these conversations, I think what I see happening a lot is like, just like, oh, I'm going to meet my friend for a beer. I'm going to grab dinner or coffee with someone. And it's like, yeah, I'm in a job search. And that's, kind of all they're bringing. And what you're doing is a little bit of like abdicating all the work to the other person to then figure out how could I help you, or what do you need, or who could I connect you with? Whereas if you come to that conversation with a clear sense of, here's what I know, here's what I'm looking for, here's the type of people or the types of organizations that I think I'd really love to connect with, it makes it so easy for that other person to be able to think like, ooh, light bulb moment, like, hey, you should talk to Sue or you should talk to Joe. They would be, they have some experience in that field, or they might know someone. It makes it so much easier for them to help you.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to why people are nervous about networking is sometimes you're not grabbing a beer with your friends. Sometimes you've reached out to somebody who's at an organization that you want to work at. And that's kind of stressful to chat with someone who's brand new to you. And so showing up without having spent the time in crafting your unique value proposition and knowing what you have to bring and where you want to go to that conversation will heighten your nervousness. So being prepared, not only in who they are, but in who you are.
Yeah, and I think that's such a big key to this, right? Is oftentimes we see people approaching job searching or wanting to, get their foot in the door with a new company or a new industry from a bit of a passive place. And, what I mean by that is like, they get online and they start just, applying to, 30 jobs a day and hoping someone notices them, hoping someone sees them like a needle in the haystack. And networking is about you getting proactive about how you're approaching your job search. So targeting specific people, targeting specific organizations, getting really clear about where you want to go and who would be really helpful in your journey to that place is you taking ownership and being kind of your own advocate in the job search process. And I want to say, that saying, luck is no such thing as luck. It's preparation meeting opportunity. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to say here is don't show up to these conversations unprepared. Like Micah said, that's going to be one, a missed opportunity, but also make you so much more nervous. But how do you make sure you have in your back pocket a strong pitch of who you are and what you want to share so you can create opportunities and, see what doors might open.
Yeah, what doors might open, what opportunities behind it. And the bottom line is you're going to feel more comfortable. And that's what we really want to just kind of drive home today is that networking can feel comfortable. And part of that is starting off with preparing.
Yeah. Okay, so the next thing that we see that I think can be a missed opportunity often with people in terms of how they approach networking is they don't have a clear strategy and they're not doing their research before they dig in to their networking. So what I mean by this is first off, you want to kind of work backwards, right? So if there's an organization that you really want to work for, or there's a particular person that you really admire, you want to start to dig in and start to research that organization or research that person to gather as much knowledge, as much information, so that when you are, sending an email or reaching out, you can personalize that message. You can really, kind of stand out from the other people who might be reaching out because it shows that you took the time to understand who's this person, what are their challenges, what might get their attention, and really being able to, kind of stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, I think that's really important. So I hear so many horror stories where people share with me the messages they get on LinkedIn, that say, hey, I'd like to chat. I like the company you're working at. And, that's an extreme example, but there's a lot of variation. So doing the work, crafting, a meaningful and thoughtful note, in addition to someone who makes sense that you're reaching out to.
Yeah, I know you and I get a lot of messages on LinkedIn and I often delete most of them, but every now and then I receive one where there's some personalization to it. Maybe they took the time to even just look at, hey, we both went to the same undergrad, or I can tell that they read through my experience and they picked out a few details that spoke to them. And I have to tell you, it grabs my attention. It makes me read the full message and I'm more likely to respond. And I think that's the thing we want to, emphasize is a personalized message that shows that you really are interested, that you have some knowledge, you did some research, ups your chances of getting a response by probably tenfold in terms of, having a networking strategy. The other thing I kind of want to emphasize too, that's along the lines is finding a unique angle, especially if the person you're trying to network with or the organization is kind of a hot thing, right? Like they're probably getting a ton of messages or that organization is probably getting a ton of applications, finding a unique angle. And I saw, a video from Gary Vee, who everyone wants to work for him, like he's the hot stuff. And he said, I guess he really likes the Philadelphia Eagles. And he was saying he gets so many messages from people like, hey, I want to help you figure out how to buy the Philadelphia Eagles. And he's like, it's so old now, but that he got a message and someone did like a whole new spin on their opening and it caught his attention. And it was like, oh, hey, I actually want to respond because that shows creativity, innovation. He's thinking outside the box. So what could be your unique angle?
Yeah, I love that. And all of this comes back to spending time, being thoughtful, spending time, preparing, and showing up with your A game.
Yep. One of the other things that I always tell my clients to do is, and this is kind of going to get into the nuts and bolts, is to also make sure that you end every networking conversation, even if it's your mom or your first cousin or a neighbor, with this question: who do you think I should talk to next?
Yeah.
Right? Because I think, all of a sudden in the moment, the person's like, hey, let me think about that. And oftentimes they'll have a name that pops up and they're like, yeah, let me connect you to this person. Or sometimes they'll say, you know what, I'm not sure, but let me get back to you. But this is a really powerful way to exponentially continue to expand your network and also get a warm connection, right? Because that person is probably going to offer to send an email intro or to connect you with that person, which is such, a great opportunity to get that person to probably answer or respond and actually talk with you. So don't ever finish a networking conversation without asking that question.
And that leads me to our next point. We see a lot of people going after this with a lot of energy and excitement, and then it quickly dissipates. And that's because they haven't taken the time to create a tracking system and organize what they're doing. So Shannon just mentioned at the end of every conversation, asking what? Asking, who could you connect me with to, or who do you think I should speak to? If you have 30 of these conversations, it's really hard to keep track of all of that. And the easiest way to do this is to figure out your own system, but often it's a spreadsheet, right? Where you are tracking who you've reached out to, when you reached out to them, and also when the call might be, what the notes were, and what the follow-up to the conversation should be. And this is so important because also sometimes these messages get lost and we've found someone we really want to talk to and we send them one message, we don't hear back and we forget about it. But if we have a system of organization, we can go back and say, oh, I sent this a week ago and I only sent one. I'm going to go ahead and send a follow-up message because people are busy. And that way, that if that person doesn't contact you back, that you've tried everything you can. And if they do, you actually can look at, okay, here's all my data lined up together. Here's the date, here's the conversation, here's the follow-up, and oh, there's the thank you note that I'm gonna send. I can make sure I have all of these key points lined up so that when I get in to do the work, the crafting the unique messages, the sending the messages, which is really like the more critical thinking and the harder work, you don't have to expend any energy in trying to think of what did I do? Who did I speak to? Where did I hear that? And that's what we hear our clients doing so much. They just are wasting this energy, this value commodity, right? Their time and energy because they're disorganized. So we always recommend figuring out some kind of tracking system or organization to the outreach that you're doing.
Yep. And I'll just add one more thing to that. I think this could be the difference between a sloppy networking strategy and really up-leveling your game. And one thing that I always share with my clients, and I think you were alluding to this too, Micah, is to also take note of the gems, the wisdom. Maybe they gave you a book recommendation or a suggestion of a person to go and research or something. Take note of those little nuggets that they shared with you in the conversation. And then in your thank you, as well as in a follow-up, maybe a month later, circle back to those nuggets and tell them like, hey, I ended up reading that book and I learned, these three things. And I just want to say thank you for sharing that with me. It's made a big difference. Or, hey, I ended up following up and reaching out to that person that you suggested. We had a really great conversation, and here's what happened next. One, it gives you a great excuse to send a follow-up and to get back on that person's radar. Two, people love to hear that what they shared with you was helpful and valuable, and that it actually made a difference in you and your job search and your experience. And so it really sticks with people, and you will stick with them. And so 2 weeks from then, right, if a job opportunity comes up or they're in a conversation, you just landed back on their radar, and they're going to be more likely to be thinking about you when the perfect opportunity or a possible other connection pops up. So keep track of those little nuggets and make sure to come back and reference them in your follow-up email.
Yeah, I love that. The follow-up is so important. The more personalized you can make it. And as you're going through your job search and when you get the new job, just continually touching back to the network and reaching in and saying, hey, I'm in my new job and you recommended this other book. And, all of those things are a really natural way to keep your network alive and you feel connected to them. And again, that takes away this fear of reaching out to strangers and such. It's just natural and organic for you to grow it and nourish it. And that leads me to my next tip, which is mindset. So Shannon and I talk to our clients all the time about mindset, and it's so important in every part of the job search or the career change. But when you're networking, it's the thing that actually will give you the most energy if you can keep your mindset straight. So again, we can go into this thinking, I hate networking, or we can flip it and we can go into it and say, this is a great opportunity to grow my professional community and learn a lot. And just in that easy flip, you're going to be able to come to the process with more energy and hopefully more positivity, because that's a big thing. It doesn't have to be dreaded. It doesn't have to be complicated. And if you show up thinking, I'm going to just present my best self, I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to connect with people who I really respect, admire, and want to learn from, it's easy to have a better mindset about it, because you're not doing anything that doesn't feel in alignment with your values and who you are. And that's the biggest mindset trick, I think, is remembering to stay true to yourself and come at this from an authentic way in which you're just showing up to learn and share and connect. And that's one piece of it. That's like going into it. But the other thing is, sometimes when you're sending all these messages and you're not getting anything back, and it feels like you're just kind of standing in front of a wave and trying to hold it up, remind yourself that people are busy. And the more you put into this, the more you will get out of it. It's very much like physical therapy. When you have an injury and you show up and the physical therapist says, do this 100 times, and you do it once and you're whining that you're not better, then that means you haven't been showing up. If you show up and you do this networking in this strategic way that Shannon and I are sharing with you, you're going to be doing a lot of outreach. And yes, you may not get a response to every message, but the more you do it, you will get responses. And those are the people who will share with you the insights that can create the next opportunity. And they can also just help you find the next conversation you need to have. So being able to keep a healthy mindset that you are going to find the people who want to talk to you, because that is the way that you keep going. And to make sure that you also, the mindset is the most important piece to end on as well. So making sure that after you've done all of your work and you're looking at that spreadsheet with all of the connections, that you're celebrating the wins, you're feeling enthusiastic about the next conversations, and you're reminding yourself that this is going to create great opportunity for you.
I have one last thing too to share about the mindset piece. We started talking about introverts and networking, and I just want to add a little mindset tip for those introverts out there. Oftentimes, right, that really feeling so uncomfortable about the idea of networking. And what I want to offer to you is that oftentimes introverts around people that they know, or, friends and family, are actually really good listeners, observers, connectors. And I think sometimes they forget that about themselves and get a little lost in like networking and strangers and like the whole idea of it. And I just want to urge you to remember that this is about relationship building. And if you can, kind of keep that in mind, I'm building a new connection, I'm building a new relationship. What I see over and over and over again is that my introverts, once they kind of make that first connection or they have that first conversation, they are like so jazzed about it. It ends up feeling so great. They feel encouraged. They're reminded that they're actually pretty good conversationalists and they know how to connect with people. What it means is probably they don't want to talk to 20 people in one day, but if they could have one good conversation, the kind of after effects and the positive energy that comes from a good conversation can really drive the rest of your job search. So I just wanted to make sure that those introverts out there have that little reminder that you're actually probably much better at this than you're probably giving yourself credit for.
I love that. It's so easy to not give ourselves credit, right? But if we follow this idea of really preparing for our networking and showing up with a personal brand we can speak to, a strategy that we're following, and also a tracking system for all that we've done, and staying in that mindset about how this is going to help us and we can do this well, then you're going to have a very successful job search, job pivot, up level with the help of networking. So thank you so much for joining us today. We hope these tips are things that are inspiring to you. If you try them out, share in the comments with us how they worked. We always love to hear. And if you really like the video, please hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much.
Bye.